Hey everyone, it's Edward again, and I want to try another stream of consciousness video stream. There's a feeling that everybody has out there that something has changed. A lot of that type content, it's being pumped out. I'm watching this guy's video. I feel like everyone's kind of got it, like they're right, but I don't know if they understand what the root cause of all of it is. The situation that's we're all experiencing has probably been around the entire time. And I've actually been one of those people who always felt this way. Like I kind of more or less always had a feeling things weren't all right. And I'm not talking about the recession or doom and gloom. I'm not talking about any of those things. To give you a little bit of my background, how I was raised, there's a few things that are maybe unique to my character. One, I grew up in rural Indiana in the Midwest. Two, in my high school, it's a blue collar high school, a very low income, almost all white. And my mom was from Mexico. And she's a white Mexican, if that makes sense. They're like very light skinned, Guadalajara. So that's why I look the way I do. I actually look like my mom's family. We look like each other. So just to get that out there, I consider myself a Caucasian American, but that's pivotal. I had to see certain things early in my childhood that were very unpleasant, and other people didn't have to share that experience. I grew up. My father was a very harsh man. He was very brutal. I think he has narcissistic personality disorder or bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. But I think both my parents did. And we grew up very poor. Like I didn't have a shower head. So we had to run a bath, but the bath water heater was for a mobile trailer, so I could never get a full bath going because it'd run out of water. So I took a lot of cold baths, and the bathtub was drywalled, was just drywall, so it'd get wet and chunks of the drywall would fall into the bath water, exposing the 2x4s. My dad was the kind of guy who smoked cigarettes in his underwear. Okay, so I'm kind of painting a picture, how my life was. So I always had to be on reality mode. I call it survivor mode, or I call it I can't lie to myself mode. And this was something that I think most people they can go through the world in rose, the cliche rose-colored glasses. They could go through life believing whatever they're being fed, right? That college is going to make them smarter, that there's going to be a safety net for when you retire, that you're going to live the American dream, that you're going to get married and have kids, that hard work is rewarded with promotion, and it's not. If you're young, let me tell you, hard work's not rewarded with promotion. It's who they like, who you fit in with. It's very rarely ever about hard work. And I would even say if you're a hard worker, you're probably going to be digging in the trenches. If you're a ditch digger and your boss has to hire a manager, he's not going to hire his best ditch digger to be the manager. He's going to probably hire the guy he's about to fire, or maybe in a bottom five, so he can avoid firing him. Maybe the most likable, lowest performing worker. That's why you get these managers who are terrible at their job, managing talented people. So you're figuring out all these hard realities and truths. You're going online, doing research, and finding out that the world is not exactly how you were brought up that it was supposed to be. I think I already knew these things, and I think what's really happening, why you are feeling like everything is terrible after 2020, and this guy, RLP, I'll have to put a picture maybe of his channel. He talks about, he thought it happened in 2015, and he is true. 2015 was a pivotal role, probably not for the reasons he thinks. The thing is, it's not that the quality of things went down necessarily, but they did go down. It's not what you're feeling though. It's not why you're alert. You are now aware that how much of this situation you've been in has been a lie, right? It's kind of like, like I said, I grew up on a farm, and I watched a pig get slaughtered, right? I saw they take a shotgun, shoot the pig, and then they string it up and do all this stuff, and they have to be careful of certain areas that they cut because they don't want to contaminate those areas. It's really a disgusting process. And then like the intestines are in the bucket, and they're getting all large. It's crazy. You really think about eating meat after that, right? You go through a process of like, man, that's pretty brutal. Now, 200 years ago, they could do that, it was not a big deal. Probably everyone was familiar with it at some point. Now to see that a lot of people would be horrified, or they probably would become vegan if they had to actually witness the entire process from start to finish. You went through 2020 being told all these narratives about lockdowns and why we're locking down, and you got to see some how people really were, right? You got to see, I had to be very careful with how I word this, that people you thought that you could negotiate with or have something in common with, you're never going to have that in common with them. You're always going to be on the other side. You're realizing that the left wing and right wing paradigm, is that the right word, paradigm? Two sides, the dichotomy, whatever. You're realizing how far different both sides are. You're realizing that one side is on a way different. You're playing basketball and they're playing, well, they're not playing. They're actually shooting at you with real stuff. So, God, it's so hard to tiptoe around this. There's a collective waking up that you can't, the illusion's been broken. The veil's been lifted, right? You are Disneyland. What's that? Wizard of Oz, and they open the curtain. There's no like magic. It's just some dude, right? I think that's how Wizard of Oz ends. There's these greyhound dogs, and I guess these greyhound dogs run around a track, and they're chasing this fake rabbit. Well, to the dog, it thinks it's a real rabbit. And every once in a while, one of these dogs is able to bite that rabbit for whatever reason. Maybe it catches up to the rabbit, or it malfunctions, or, it sees a rabbit sitting there and it bites it one day and realizes it's a metal steak with a fuzzy thing on it. That dog has no interest in chasing that rabbit anymore. It is a done race dog, or so they say. So with the phones and social media and all these events that have taken place over the last, I think he's right, 2015, I think there was a time where you would watch like CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and to some degree you had faith. You felt like they were acting in good faith. 2015 rolls around, the big T-man comes along, and you realize that these guys aren't necessarily acting in good faith. You realize who they really are. You have friends that you never spoke politics with. You realize that they believe very differently. You go on Facebook, social media, you realize people you knew, you learn things about them they didn't know, that you didn't know about them, because nothing ever really prompted them to have a response. And I can't go back in the bottle. You can't put toothpaste back into the tube, so to speak. So that's why you're going around. In my opinion, you're just finally realizing this was all an illusion. Something I've been familiar with my whole life. I don't think college makes you smarter. I think it's a symbol of your wealth and your parental values. I don't think, like I said, hard work doesn't get you the promotion. I don't believe the stats and numbers coming out of the government. I don't think we can solve problems. Like we talk about going to Mars to live. Like if you can't make the world, if you can't fix the planet that you're on currently, you think you're going to jump on a rocket and go to Mars, and that's completely uninhabitable with no people, no resources, no nothing, no water, and you're going to fix that. I used to want to go to college, and I was on the dean's list. Maybe I'll cut away, but I was on the dean's list. Top 3% highest GPA at a community college, of course. And I was 5 classes from getting my associates in something IT related. And I couldn't shake this feeling that it was all fake. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was participating in this thing that I thought was supposed to enlighten me, but I'm getting in debt. And I don't feel any smarter. And I only needed these 4 classes to do IT stuff, which was like an A+, Network+, Microsoft Certified Desktop Support Technician. I only needed these classes to get a job, but I wanted the associates because I thought, it'll make me smarter. I'd be sitting there in the classroom and these, with other college students. Some of them would go to school at like UCSD and then take community college classes to make it cheaper. They did some kind of thing like that. And I'd be thinking, you're not that bright. You are not that smart. Not in a bad way, like you're dumb, but you're a very average person, but you carry yourself with the confidence and demeanor and decorum of like a very highly sophisticated intellectual person.
A new study from UC San Diego finds rising numbers of college freshmen are unable to do middle school level math. As a response to this frightening trend, the university is introducing a course on elementary and middle school Common Core math. The study found a concerning number of students couldn't solve a simple elementary school equations. For example, 7 + 2 = 6 plus what? 25% of students couldn't answer 3. So here's a
I couldn't stomach it, man. It was like, maybe because I went to college later in life, I couldn't take it. I couldn't get in more debt for something that I was convinced I didn't need. It was like 2008, 2009-ish. But I think a lot of you, so the reason I bring that up is you got a college degree and you got all this debt and now you can't find a job. So you're finding out the lie after you've already crossed the Rubicon, so to speak, and you got to live with that. So for you, that's probably even harsher. Like, I think the earlier you wake up that this is all BS, the earlier in life that you learn it, the better off you'll be as an adult. And I think so many of you are figuring this out in like 30, that it's like crushing your soul. You know, you think that, the dating scene, you used to think women had this, you watch Disney movies, right? And you thought you were going to be Prince Charming, or you thought you were going to be this white knight and this girl's going to like you. And it turns out they don't even care. They're just a friend that they're using to boost their self-esteem. You're not even like a friend, right? You're like one of those dogs, like those little fuzzy dogs, the Shih Tzus or whatever. You're like a dog to them. You're all realizing how terrible this whole thing is because social media, the internet, you're not getting the sources from the approved sources anymore, and you recognize that they were also feeding you lies. I think some of you also would have had children by now. I think having children does help insulate some of this. Like, if you know the world around you is not that great anymore, at least you can make a change in your own children. And I think some of you have gotten so deep into that, like global warming, population overload, all these narratives, that maybe that window is starting to pass. And you didn't realize it, but if you would have had kids, intentional or, unplanned, which seemed to be like a lot of people, to be real, keeping it real here. I think if you would have had kids, you would have been insulated from some of this as well. Because then you have purpose in your life, right? Like, it's not about you anymore. Like, you're kind of passing off the torch, so to speak. But again, you believe the narrative about the population, that the planet's going to have like 40 billion people and we're all going to, And in a way, it's good news, right? You don't have to worry about feeding all these people. Some of the challenges that we're going to come with overpopulation. A lot of the issues that we're talking about really do come down to social and financial. There's a death of shared experiences. I remember going to Blockbuster and looking at movies, and I was probably like 22, not even 22, like 19, 22, and there'd always be like girls my age, and they're also looking at movies. And there'd be that look, you look over and they look at you, and you look over and your friend's like, look at that girl, There's people who don't have that. They never went to Fry's Electronics. I think that's the other part of this, is that if you're 35 and above, 33 and above, there's a whole generation below you that has almost made all of their purchases exclusively through a phone. I would bet that there are people who've never been to the remaining malls still in their city, right? I would put money that there's at least a double-digit percentage who've never been to a mall under the age of 30. Going to the mall. Walking through the mall, seeing the girls, right? Like, seeing the girls gives you some kind of like, you have a drive, right? Like, I'm gonna get me a brand new Mustang, right? And you're gonna drive around the mall. You have this vision in your head. I'll just speak for myself, that you're gonna drive around the mall, and if a future version of yourself in this Mustang, the girls are gonna be walking, and you're gonna pass them, and they're gonna be looking at you, and you're gonna be looking at them, right? And even if you changed your mind in the middle of that, like you went and bought a truck, and you never went, the idea is that you had something to that motivated you, because you went to the mall and you saw the pretty girls, and you felt for a moment that there was something to work towards. I remember, I was in trouble a lot in high school, and I went to a detention center for 30 days, and I was ready. I was so stoked on the detention center because my childhood was so rotten. I was so stoked on staying in that detention center. I was even requesting to be in like a boys' detention camp, where it was like this boot camp thing. Because I'd look out the window in my cell and I'd see the guys in like the long-term 6 month to 1 year doing marches and pull-ups and all that. So I was so stoked on like pleading not guilty and just trying to get the hardest charge available so I can stay in this boys detention center, Vincennes, Indiana. I don't know if it's still around. But you still have to go to the courthouse to like do the stuff in front of the judge. And when I got to the courthouse and I saw pretty girls again after being 2 weeks of locked up with dudes, you're like, okay, I'm pleading guilty. Charge me. Give me the probation. I don't need to go to the boys' prison, because it was summertime and I wanted to try and get a girlfriend. That's a true story, 100%. All right, guys. that's enough rambling. But going back to the topic of this and bringing this full circle, to me, what you're experiencing is that you can no longer wear the rose-colored glasses. And let me tell you something. It's not getting any better. It will not get any better. You are now awake and aware, and you have to start living in this new world, because you left the matrix, man. You left the matrix, right? There's no going back to the matrix. It's not the same. You're out of the matrix, and you can still make a good life for yourself, but you have to make the life with the understanding that the world that you used to know is never going to come back. And once you can let go of that, I think you start to make better choices in life. You start to make better friendships. You start to connect with real people. But you keep going through this thing where everything's terrible. You don't have a good feeling about anything. And you keep saying, well, the internet. Okay, well, yeah, the internet. We all know that part. But what is it about here that has changed? You're still living in the real world. But here's something changed. It's because you can't deal with the reality. Anyways, this is a stream of consciousness. I thought I'd try one. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Leave a comment. I want to know what you thought. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.